Services Marketing, MKT625. Lecture number 21.
Assalamu alaikum Khawateen Hazrat. Waseem Hassan welcomes you to lecture number 21 of Services Marketing MKT625 at the Virtual University of Pakistan. We are very much into relationship marketing, and we know by now very well that this starts where transactional marketing ends. We pick up the threads, the ones we have struck the deal, and at the conclusion of the commercial deal, which I'm referring to, we start developing relationships. We also have learned that there are quite a few benefits that we derive out of developing relationships. And do not lose sight of the fact that we are trying to learn all this because relationship marketing is one of the very important strategic elements that we deal with while plugging the gap number one. So in other words, we still are in the process of learning all those elements that are going to help us toward plugging that gap. The very important objectives of relationship marketing are attracting customers, retaining customers, and enhancing relationships. But once we have attracted customers, meaning once we are done with the transactional side of it, we start developing relationships. And with the help of that development, we retain our customers. And once we start retaining our customers and they are satisfied with the quality of the service that we have sold them, then we get into further enhancing those relationships. And enhancement of relationships basically refers to getting more loyal customers. You know very well that we have a very profitable base of customers by developing relationships with them. And the beauty of enhancing the relationship is that those loyal customers bring in more customers who in turn become loyal to the company, and the process goes on and on. The net result is that we have a bigger base of profitable customers, which really leads the companies into making more profits, not only making more profits, but getting into so many different kinds of benefits that I'm going to talk about in a few moments from now. What I indicated to you is that by getting into relationships, what customers like to look into as the first thing is the value. And the value basically is the trade-off between what they give and what they get. What they give is the monetary side, meaning the price which they give to buy a service, and what they get is so many different benefits. In macro terms, we can say that what they get is a function of the quality and satisfaction. Meaning, if they get quality and if they get quality on a continual basis, they remain satisfied. And if they are satisfied, they think they're getting great value from the company. But these are macro terms. We have to get into the micro side of it, and we look into things like the features which customers perceive as carrying a lot of value. We look into things like the pricing which customers perceive is a good price. Now, when I talk about a price being good, it doesn't really mean that that price has got to be the lowest in the world. No, it doesn't mean that. What it really means is a perception on part of the customers of getting a positive trade-off in terms of the value. Meaning what they are getting from the company is bigger than what they are giving to the company. Now, the benefits which they get could take different shapes and forms, and we have to look into all those. The fact is that customers as well as providers both gain out of a relationship. Meaning there are benefits for both the parties, i.e. for the customers and for the providers. What are the benefits for the customers apart from the quality and satisfaction that we have been talking about? Well, there are confidence benefits and social benefits and special treatment benefits among the ones which are enjoyed by the customers. There could be so many different offshoots of these benefits, but just for the sake of having a feel of the kind of benefits which customers really like, let me talk about those in brevity. First of all, the social benefits are the ones which customers enjoy by developing kind of a social relationship with the providers. So this social dimension brings in a further the level of loyalty to the equation, and thereby strengthens the relationship. The fact is that providers tend to become part of the social support system when it comes to customers. Just take a look at the event management companies, the medical services, and the education systems. You will realize that relationships of the providers are not really confined to just one person. They really extend beyond one person into the families. And what I'm saying is the providers really develop relationships with people across the families. And by doing so, both the parties benefit. Taking the example of event management, by way of looking at them as the wedding event companies, you can well imagine the benefits of the relationship which just one person or the family enjoys with the company, and how efficient and effective the outcome of that relationship exhibits itself when the function takes place. So what I'm saying is, it is all because of the relationship that providers look into the equation more efficiently, because they know they have to retain the customer. And with that objective of retention and further enhancement of the relationship, providers render the service in a way which is better than if that service was bought for the first time from anybody else, meaning from one of the competitors. The flip side of this kind of a social relationship is when the particular employee with whom the individual or the family, for that matter, enjoys a relationship, leaves the company, then he takes the business away from that particular company to the competitor he joins. So companies have to be very sensitive about the dynamics of these relationships, and therefore they should take all precautions in terms of the development, meaning they should involve more than one individual when it comes to developing a relationship, because at the time of the exit of that particular individual who happens to be pretty good at developing relationships, the company does not really run into a loss situation by losing a good customer. Because what happens is, when you lose a good customer, along with him, you might lose others as well. Just like a good and a loyal customer that brings in more customers, a good customer leaving the company can take with him a few more customers. And that is a situation which providers have to keep from happening. The other benefit which customers enjoy out of a good relationship is the benefits of confidence. Whenever you, as customers, have to buy a service, you go through a state of uncertainty, and the level of anxiety is pretty high. The level of comfort and confidence is pretty low. And these are the elements and the features of the pre-purchase process which we have educated ourselves about pretty much in detail. And you know how customer feels when it goes through that particular phase. So what happens is, when providers start developing relationships, it means people, meaning customers who've had a good experience with the company, are the ones who are coming back to buy that service again and again. Don't really have to go through that state of anxiety and discomfort all over again. What happens is, with the help of these relationships, the people do not really look for alternatives, meaning that your customers do not really look for competitors, because they feel very confident in your hands. They think they're in safe hands. And initially, what really worked for the company by way of instilling confidence into them has been demonstrated practically by rendering a good service. And that is something which really gives them a level of confidence. With that confidence, they don't really want to shop around, meaning they don't really want to invest time into looking for a better value from some other competitor. And you will recall I having told you that your customers, in most of the cases, also happen to be the business people. Even if they are not business people and they are end consumers, they don't really have time. And they have limited time devoted to different things that they have to do in life. and looking for alternatives and going to the other competitors takes quite a bit of time. And if they think of going to the competitors, they know that the competitors are going to take time before they start understanding their requirements. The simple reason is that you have developed a certain level of relationship. And after developing that relationship, you might have carried out marketing research also. And what if you also have gone through that requirement research and all those studies which really pinpoint the exact requirements of that particular customer? So why in the first place that customer should feel the need of looking into alternatives? Well, the need will arise only if you stop offering that trade-off which I talked about at the beginning of the lecture, meaning the moment customers start realizing that they're not getting the value out of the relationship, they will start thinking in terms of switching. And this is a situation with which you must keep from happening. In addition to the confidence benefits, there are special treatment benefits which customers enjoy out of good relationships. And those are the benefits which are an extension of what I've talked about so far, meaning the social benefits and the confidence benefits. Because of the relationships, you get, as customers, some special treatment either by way of price, meaning a good price. I'm not saying you qualify to get discounts because when you are a loyal customer, you do not really haggle for pricing. But the fact remains that good customers do get better pricing once they start buying more and more. Another benefit of special treatment could be that in a state of emergency, you can be given preference over others only because you happen to be a loyal customer and you have a history of positive, good transactions with the company. In fact, this takes you as providers into the area of responsiveness, spontaneity, and empathy. Loyal customers do expect their providers in certain situations to be more empathetic towards their cause because they happen to be in a situation of emergency, for example. So by the same token, they also expect them to be more responsive and more spontaneous whenever situations present themselves. And having understood these benefits, I would like now to switch on to the next set of benefits which organizations enjoy because of good relationships. There could be so many different kinds of benefits, but first of all, let me tell you that organizations could have a base of loyal customers that offers them a higher level of profitability. So profitability is the first thing which is offered to organizations because of good relationship marketing. Now, how does this profitability present itself? Because of the simple fact that you do not really have to run after new customers. You concentrate on building the relationships and enhancing those relationships. Therefore, you do not really have to offer hefty discounts in order to lure new customers into the base that you already have. You also do not have to get into a high level of advertising in order to create awareness for your service. You already have a loyal base of customers who fully are satisfied with the service that you keep providing them from time to time, and therefore marketing costs that are to be incurred in order to bring in new customers are not incurred in case of relationships. Therefore, you also got onto different kinds of administrative costs. When you have low costs, it automatically leads towards better margins, meaning on the one hand, you have higher revenues because you have a very good base of loyal customers who spend more and more with the company. On the other hand, the costs associated with all those transactions are on the lower side only because you do not really have to get into all those costs which are to be incurred in case of getting new customers. So the automatic result is better contribution margins and a better bottom line. No hefty promotions, no hefty discounts, and so on and so forth. And at the end of the day, the company is happy, satisfied because it is generating revenue with the help of retained customers. Another benefit which organizations derive out of this relationship is free advertising. Now, this is an extension of what I already have talked about. The reason I say the free advertising, because these people spread effective messages among prospects and new customers, because they happen to be, meaning the existing customers, satisfied customers. And because they happen to be satisfied customers, the referrals they give are very positive. And you will recall that many of the services are rich on credence. Because services happen to be very experiential in nature, and the customers cannot really evaluate services until the time they have bought those, referrals and endorsements really do magic in these kind of situations. So all those services which are referral and endorsement dependent, they do need a positive word of mouth, and that positive word of mouth comes free of cost from those customers who are loyal to the company, without the company having to actuate them to spread that word. The fact is that people feel so much committed with the product and hence with the company that they talk instinctively about the product in a positive manner, and that's what the companies really look for. Another good benefit that companies get out of these relationships is retention of staff, meaning that when you have retained customers because of good relationships, that also leads toward retention of good staff members. What happens is when staff members keep dealing with customers who are satisfied, the members of staff get a unique sense of satisfaction out of that relationship, because they know that they're the people who render services to these people, and it is because of that delivery of service that these people stand satisfied, and therefore they work with enthusiasm and a sense of commitment, which is higher every time those customers come back to the company. The flip side of this relationship could be losing some customers when these kind of staff members leave the company. And again, I would say that it is upon the companies to look into their human resource strategies that really can keep the people from leaving. The importance of maintaining relationships has become so high that many corporations around the world have started working out what they call the lifetime contribution of customers. They look into an average life cycle of the one particular customer who is committed with the company, and based on that lifespan, they work out things like how many purchases this customer will make during his lifetime, and what is going to be the level of revenue which this particular customer will generate, and how many referrals will this customer give, and how many new customers this particular customer will bring into the company, and what in turn is going to be the lifetime value of those new customers if they become loyal, and what will be the revenue, and so on and so forth. They employ sophisticated accounting techniques which are very new nowadays, and with the help of those techniques, they could work out these numbers. So this is the kind of significance of retaining customers. The culture of the organization and the mindset on part of the people who work for the organization have got to undergo a very positive change in order to achieve all that I've talked about. And gone are the days when you would give incentives only for bringing in new customers. Good companies have undergone that change which I just talked about, meaning they work with a new mindset, and they've gone through the paradigm shift, and with the changes in the organizational structures and the cultures, that they are paying a lot of attention toward retention strategies, because we have seen how much less expensive it really is with maintaining and retaining your customer base. According to one research, by just retaining 5% more customers, the increase in profitability is in the range of 35 to 95%. I mean, the correspondence between the two is out of all proportions. Just about retention of customers by a factor of 5%, leading towards an increase of somewhere between 35 and 95 is absolutely phenomenal. And therefore, it proves the fact that the retaining your customers is of utmost importance. Again, I would say this is not to say that we stop running after new customers. All I'm saying is that we've got to be very clear about our objectives, meaning the objectives of relationship marketing, which are attracting new customers, retaining them, and enhancing the relationship. So it all starts with attracting new customers. Once you have attracted them, you have to start working on building relationships, because it is because of that development of relationships that you save so much costs and make so much more profits, thereby making the company a very healthy financial entity. And that is the ultimate objective of every corporation. Meaning, alongside satisfying needs and requirements of the customers, the company also has to do something about the equity holders. And this is one of the best ways, meaning by following the strategies of retention of customers, you really can get into a situation of profitability which is much better than working on new customers all the time. Because, to give you a summary, you don't really have to spend too much on advertising and all those associated marketing and administrative costs that are related with bringing in new customers. Now, if it is that much important to retain customers, we have to look into what really could be the strategies of relationship marketing or relationship building for that matter. And before we start looking into the strategies, I think we've got to be very clear about the foundations of relationship building. There are three basic foundations that we must understand in absolute clarity. The first one is that our service has got to be a quality service. Now, this is something that we have learned after so many lectures, and the function of quality and satisfaction is something that we really are experts on, I suppose. And the total area of the dimensions of quality on which customers evaluate a service are the ones which should be the basis of the quality service that I'm talking about. So in other words, if we think that we're going to develop relationships in the absence of a quality service product, those relationships are not going to bear fruits. That's all I'm saying. So in order to make our relationships very fruitful, the very first assumption and the very first foundation of relationship building is that the prerequisite of quality service has to be there in any case and under any circumstances. If our service happens to be inferior to competitors, then there is no way those relationships are going to bear any fruits. That's the point. The second one is about segmentation, which we have to understand in detail, although I wouldn't like to get into too many details because you are educated about the concept of segmentation, but in the context of the services, we have to take a renewed look to just brush up our knowledge about the dynamics of segmentation and all those the basic factors that we have to take into consideration before we start segmenting our market to the benefit of the company and to the benefit of our customers. The third one is the monitoring of relationships, meaning that the ones that we have developed the right quality and we are offering that good quality on a continual basis to our loyal customers, and we also have looked into the right kind of segments, then we have to continually monitor those relationships and we have to employ certain techniques. Let me now get back to the foundation of segmentation after having talked about the first foundation of quality service. What is segmentation and why is it that we get into segmentation, and what are the bases and how do we identify different segments, and what should be the conclusion at the end of the study of segmentation are some of the features that I'm going to talk about in today's lecture. In order to understand segmentation, we have to first talk about mass marketing. And we all know that in the olden days, we used to have just mass marketing, meaning sellers would get into mass production and then mass distribution and then mass promotion in order to achieve the one large segment for whom the service or the product, maybe a tangible product, was developed. The major benefit of this approach was that manufacturers and service sellers also were in a position to keep costs on a lower side because they could achieve higher efficiencies and productivities by getting into economies of scale. And they also could keep the prices on a lower side to the benefit of the customers. But like I said, gone are the days when we used to deal with those segments, with the exception of a couple of services which are still huge segments without any distinctions for demographics and psychographics. I will come to that. But the fact is that the modern day marketing works in a different way, and we basically deal with 4 different levels. One is the segments, other is the niche, and the third one is the localized marketing, and the fourth one is individual marketing. Just to give you a brief introduction to all these levels of marketing, with the exception of segmentation, which I'm going to talk in detail, let us try to understand what niche marketing is all about. It is a very small group that we deal with, and we define that group by way of the certain characteristics of the lifestyle and the personality traits maybe, in order to feed that particular market with a very specialized kind of a product. This generally is a small market, not very big, and the pricing benefits that companies get out of this the marketing could be very attractive, and that is why companies like to get into niche marketing. In local marketing, what you do is divide population into smaller localized kind of groups, and those groups can be groups of traders, or those could also be small communities, because they have certain characteristics which the marketing people have to address to, and that is why you like to get into the very specialized mode of marketing, which is in response to those the local traits and local characteristics. And that is one of the reasons that many companies may not like to go for advertising campaigns on a national basis, because they think different local communities or local groups have different needs and requirements. Back to the third form of, or the level of marketing, is individual marketing. Now, this is what we really deal with when it comes to services marketing, and this is the division of groups of people into individuals, and then responding to the needs and requirements of those individuals. And you will recall those the marketing studies in which we develop marketing plans for even one single individual customer, and therefore the need for individual marketing. The study of segmentation is carried out between mass marketing and marketing for the individual. So that is the beauty of developing segments between 2 different extremes. So in other words, we can say that there are 2 broad categories of marketing or markets. One is that carries a broad appeal for a very consistent service for a huge portion of population, or for the whole population in one particular market, whereas the other broad category is that dictates customization, and through customization you create an appeal for one individual customer, or for small individual groups, meaning for small segments. And therefore the need for us to define those segments between the 2 extremes that I've just talked about. And you will also recall that during my introduction to the importance of relationship marketing and segmentation, I did talk about 2 terminologies, the one being the segment of all and the other being segment of one. When we talk about segment of all, we are talking about the broad category which carries a universal appeal for one particular service in a pure services context. The other one is the segment of one, in which we customize our services and we divide population into so many different segments, and every segment is a very specific kind of a segment, and we call it segment of one. It could be just one individual, or it could be a very small group which behaves like just one individual. So these are the two extremes that we have to understand, and after developing understanding, we look into the different segmentation that we can have to ourselves as a benefit for the company and also for the customer. Let us take a look at a graphical presentation in order to make my point, which I'm trying to explain. You can see from this presentation that we have the overall market, and it is divided into two different segments. Now, these are two extremes, as a matter of fact. On the left-hand side is the segment of all, and on the right-hand side, we have segment of one, which signifies customization. And these both lead us toward a very strategic question, and that is, what is the right segment, or what are the right segments between these two extremes? In order to develop that understanding, providers have to take certain steps before they can really start dealing with the right segments. Those steps are, first of all, we have to identify the basis of segmentation. The second step is we have to identify certain profiles of those segments. The third one is we have to measure the attractiveness of different segments. And the fourth one is, after measuring the attractiveness, we identify which should be the target segments in terms of our service and our company goals and objectives. And then the next one is making sure that the segment that we are dealing with deals with very compatible kind of groups of customers within the segment. And then we shall draw a conclusion as to what should be the segmentation suitable to the goals and objectives of our company. Because I'm going to talk about in a very generalized manner, it will become easy for all of you to relate these the bases or these steps with any company that you may work for. Let us now talk about the first step, which is identification of basis of segmentation. As you know from your previous study from marketing management, there could be the four different bases. The one is the demographic basis, the other one is the psychographic, the geographic, and the fourth one could be the behavioral. Now, let us talk about these four bases one by one very briefly, because these certainly carry a lot of significance in the context of services marketing. Demographic basis provides us information on customers' income and race and religion, their age, and their occupation, and all those the fundamental variables which really facilitate marketing people to develop certain relationships between all these variables and the way they behave. And demographic segmentation is very important because most of the findings that you arrive at, even when you have a different basis of segmentation, are related with the variables of demographics. So in other words, what I'm saying is, in any case, we tend to develop links of different findings with the basic variables of demographics, which are age, sex, income, occupation, religion, etc., etc. The next one is the geographic segmentation, another very important in terms of services marketing, because when we talk of segmenting the market based on geography, we do not talk in terms of managing the market in terms of distances. It is not that because this part of the country or part of the region happens to be close to this particular area, this is attached with this particular segment. No, geographic segmentation basically talks about the features of one particular market in terms of its different characteristics. For example, when we talk about hotel services, meaning hospitality, the segment of leisure or vacationing is one particular segment, whereas business travelers constitute another. So in other words, when we are talking about hotels within the leisure market, we are basically referring to the hospitality services relating to resort hotels. And the whole personality of the same chain of hotel gets changed because we are dealing with a different segment. While we deal with vacationers who come to resort hotels along with their families, we have to deal with different demands because they come there with different needs and requirements. And by the same token, there's a different kind of a decor for those hotels, and the kind of service and the nature of service also differs in comparison with when you are dealing with business travelers and offering services within those hotels that happen to be very cosmopolitan in the hearts of large or major cities. So this is the one example of geographic segmentation. But again, the ones that you have the drawn distinction between different geographic segments, you again have to develop links with certain level of demographics. The point here is not to rub in the importance of demographics in the light of services marketing. It only is to brush up your knowledge so that you can be on the right track while you look into the dynamics of the segmentation. The third one is psychographics, and you know very well psychographics basically relate to personality traits and to a certain social class and to a certain lifestyle. Now, this lifestyle and the social class may belong to a demographic group which is very similar in terms of age or income, but it is the lifestyle which really differentiates these particular people who are to be segmented onto psychographic lines from those who are segmented on demographic lines. So the study of psychographics also takes on the added significance in terms of services because we've got to discriminate very much in terms of being accurate so that we really come up to the expectations of our customers. Because we are talking about all these concepts in relation to plugging the gap number one, and therefore there has to be total clarity in terms of our understanding of all the concepts that I'm talking about. The fourth basis is what you may call behavioral segmentation. It gives you a division on opinions and attitudes and the reactions of your customers to the benefits they look for. And therefore, you can get into segmentation of this type by way of revealing the level of loyalty they have toward a certain product and the level of satisfaction and dissatisfaction they have in response to the certain needs which they find very pressing. This is a tool which is extremely important for services marketers because many of the marketing studies that we have learned could be related with behavioral segmentation, and once we have the findings, we can develop the linkages with the demographics and the relationship of demographics with the service quality, meaning serve qual and all that, and the whole thing really falls in place in terms of developing a complete model of not only marketing research but also pinpointing what kind of segments that we should be dealing with are important in light of the nature of the service that we are dealing with and the purpose of our organization. I think it becomes very clear by giving you one example of the behavioral segmentation. Just like I talked about the geographical segmentation by giving you an example of vacationers versus business travelers, let me again give you the same example between vacationers and business travelers in the context of air transportation. Look at the occasion and the benefit which are related to the occasion of business which necessitates their travel during the weekdays, and look at the actuating factors or the motivating forces which really make people travel on weekends along with the families. Maybe they go to resorts to have their vacations. Maybe they go back to their hometowns in order to spend time with the families. So the motives are very different and the occasions are very different and the benefits they look for are very different. Whereas during the weekdays, they might like to maintain a certain business status by flying a certain class. They may not care too much about the class they fly. So, in other words, that becomes the strategic watershed, meaning they have two different strategies and they have to have two different strategies for two different segments of the market. you might look at the flyers as one huge segment, but when it comes to looking into the behavior of different people within the same segment, you realize that in terms of behavior, you can divide the whole population into two different segments. And that is the beauty of the behavioral segmentation. But like I said, once you have the findings, you can develop linkages between the results of the behavioral segmentation with demographics in order to see why people having certain demographic characteristics behave in a certain way while they are on vacation and in a certain way while they are on business. Having talked about the four bases of segmentation and developed an understanding the kind of segment or segments that we should be dealing with in light of the nature of our service and the purpose of our organization, there are certain requirements which we again have to look into in order to make sure that we have identified the right base and that we are on the right strategic track. The requirements that we look into in terms of the basis, number one, a segment has got to be measurable, meaning the measurability matrix has got to be very convincing in terms of the size and the growth of the segment. If the size of the segment is not very big, there's no point going ahead with the service because it may not be very profitable. And by the same token, even if the size is big, but the growth is not really promising, you may like to avoid that particular segment. So the measure of measurability is so very important that it has got to be related with the basis of segmentation that you have carved out for yourselves. The next requirement dictates that a segment has got to be accessible, meaning if it is not accessible, despite being very promising and profitable, there's no point that the company should go ahead with identification of that segment as the area of business the company is going to do. What if you cannot really communicate with the customers, or you really have a lot of difficulties in trying to find out what exactly their expectations are, only because they're not reachable or there are certain communication problems, so that you should be avoiding that kind of segment. The next one requires that a segment is sustainable, and sustainability basically is about the size of the segment, meaning the size should be big enough that the company is in a position to make handsome profits out of the business that it does within that particular segment. The fourth one is about actionability. You have to be able to take certain actions in line with the company goals and objectives, meaning this segment should be such that it must offer opportunities to the company to come up with certain programs of strategic nature which are meant to reach those segments so that they really can develop the business there and then develop relationships. In the absence of this requirement, the company should not go ahead with the segment it might otherwise have identified for itself. So what I'm saying is that there are certain requirements which are to be fulfilled before you really are convinced about the choice of the basis of your segment. The four bases, meaning demographics, psychographics, geographic, and behavioral, and then evaluated on a certain criteria which comes up with the four different requirements. The requirement of the measurability, the requirement of accessibility, the requirement of substantiability, and the requirement of actionability. These are the four requirements which providers could have to fulfill after they really have identified the basis of segmentation. Now, once we have identified the basis, we have to go to the next step of understanding, and that is we develop profiles for these segments. And the fact is that our understanding of the basis of segmentation and fulfillment of the requirements could automatically take us into the identification of profiles for different segments. And how do we develop these profiles? We develop these profiles again by looking at a certain criteria. The first criterion is that we must be very convinced about the size and the growth of the segment. It again is a repetition of the same factor which I talked about in relation to the measurability of the segment that you have chosen to yourself. It's not only the size and the growth of the segment, you also have to look at the structural attractiveness of this particular segment. If it is growing, why is it growing so much? Is it only because of the monopoly, the situation enjoyed by your company, or is it because of so many different players and the whole market is really expanding at a rapid rate? If it is expanding that fast, what are the reasons, and what is it that really makes it so attractive? The objective is to try to reveal as many different segments and different subgroups within the segment, so that you can come up with a variety of features and then make the whole proposition very profitable for the company and also for the customer. You make it profitable for the company by charging a price of your choice, because you are adding different features to different products, which happen to be different extensions of an overall product. And at the same time, you are fulfilling the requirements and needs of your customers, and thereby having them as satisfied customers. Structural attractiveness, in other words, is a function of different factors, and those are the number of players within that segment who are offering different services. So meaning the level of competitiveness. If you find out that there are too many players within the segment, you may like to avoid that. And before you make the decision of avoiding that, you have to develop the profile. And that is the feature which we are trying to learn at the moment. We also look into the purchasing power of customers, and like I said, the overall growth patterns and the contributions made by different players. If you find the attractiveness to your favor, you continue. Otherwise, you make decisions which are more practicable. Once you have developed the profiles of segmentation, you can easily get into the next step, which is about measuring the attractiveness of the segment. And the fact is that development of profiles automatically takes you toward that step, because looking into the structural attractiveness and other measures in relation to that, you automatically can come up with the measure of attractiveness of a segment that you are considering dealing with. The next step falls in place after you have done all this, and that is the selection of the target segment. Meaning, once you're clear about the basis of identification of the segment, whether it is going to be geographic, demographic, psychographic, or behavioral, and you've fulfilled all the requirements, developed the profiles, and have looked into the attractiveness of the segment, you obviously can select the right segment for the company which you think is going to be very compatible with the resource capability of your company. If you do not see the equation coming up, you may, even at this stage, avoid getting into that particular segment. The next step is that you have to make sure that once you have started operating within that segment, that all the groups and subgroups within this segment are compatible. Now, this level of compatibility or incompatibility basically presents itself in terms of variations of pricing patterns or pricing strategies. This could be very interesting and challenging at the same time for the service providers, because what happens is while they make an effort to develop an equilibrium between supply and demand in relation to different periods, meaning peak period and lean period, they come up with strategies, i.e. pricing strategies that may give lead to different groups becoming incompatible. Again, I would like to give you an example from the hospitality industry, meaning hotels, where you have two different groups of people walking into. The one is the vacationers who might walk into the hotel at a time when it is peak period, and therefore you might charge them a particular price. Conversely, you may have a group of the people who happen to be in a hotel for business purposes, try to understand the occasion and the benefit people are looking for. But this group has walked into the hotel at a time when the time is lean. Now, if these two different groups get into interaction, because a service scape is a place where people do get into contact with each other. And we talk about people, it is not just the providers, it also the customers. So when two different groups of customers from within the same segment buying the same service find out that they have been subjected to different pricing strategies, a conflict arises, and that becomes a challenging situation for the service providers. So this is what is meant by the ability of the service providers to ensure that the segment that they have selected is very compatible, meaning all the groups and subgroups who form that particular segment remain very compatible, which in other words means they should not come into contact with each other if there is a variation of strategies that work to bring those people into the service. So this is what this target segment in terms of compatibility means. We can draw a very interesting conclusion from the learning that we've had so far during this lecture and from the one that we did from the previous one, that all the strategic directions lead toward the one fact, and that is the segment of one. Segmentation is a means to getting customization, and customization is the name of the game. We've got to be able to find out different variations within these segments, and then be able to capitalize on those by offering services which happen to be customized. Now, when I talk about customization, it doesn't really mean that we make our life really hard in order to give an exhaustive list of options to our customers, meaning number of solutions which could be unlimited. No, the answer doesn't lie there. The answer lies in trying to find out variations between different features and then adding those features to different products by way of not incurring too much cost, by not investing too much into additional equipment, and yet exhibiting our ability to satisfy the needs and requirements of our customers. What we really have to understand is that our efforts to divide a huge portion of population into different segments and then into smaller sub-segments is an effort toward customization. And customization is something which services and marketing people must look for the simple reason that by offering the variability of features, we are satisfying different kinds of needs. And therefore, on the one hand, the difficulties which we think are really the challenges also provide us with opportunities. And we have the opportunities of getting into customization by offering different features. This is going to be the basis of our next learning in lecture number 22. I really thank you for your attendance and look forward to talking with you then. Allah Hafiz.